On Friday, unfortunately, we had 8 fatalities. We had 8 deceased, that's been the most I've seen in a day. Drownings and people found in the brush. We're averaging about 1 to 2 per day right now of either persons that were found either drowned in the river or they've succumbed to the elements out in the brush because of the heat. Now that we're going into the summer months.
Is it mostly men, women, and children?
Everything. We've had on Thursday, I believe it was Thursday, they found 3 children, 8, 10, and 5 years old, I believe.
Welcome to Eagle Pass, the fastest route between San Antonio and Mexico, and is often referred to as La Puerta de Mexico, or Mexico's door. This small town is at the center of the USA-Mexico border crisis, and the expected end of Title 42 was forecasted to unleash chaos to the already thin resources that protect our border. In a plot twist of events, a federal judge ruled Biden administration must keep expelling migrants at the border under Title 42, and I arrived on the ground of Eagle Pass following a tragic school shooting just an hour away in Uvalde, Texas. To understand and observe the situation at America's southern border, I joined Deputy Constable Hal Bowles in a ride-along through Eagle Pass, Texas. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Tara PoAm, and thanks for joining me on the ground at Eagle Pass.
Highway 480 or Farm to Market 480. And along here is where we have the border wall. The section that they've put up here all along this area for a couple mile stretch. And I'm going to take you all to an area over here. Up until about a month ago, there underneath the port of entry number 2 there in Eagle Pass, or here in Eagle Pass, should I say, that was like a main hotspot area for crossing. And up until about less than about a month ago, the Mexican authorities, Mexican law enforcement has kind of posted themselves there along underneath the port of entry area. And it's kind of discouraged a lot of the crossings right there. But that's the result of that is that it's only moved the people crossing to either north or south. So they're just going around them. But all up and down this area here, this big brushy area, this is a main hotspot for crossing. It's moved over here from the port of entry. It's shifted south here. And the National Guard, they've been telling us they've been having a lot more runners lately, rather than undocumented persons crossing and wanting to give themselves up. That now they're choosing just to straight out run. They don't want to turn themselves in, rather.
How long ago was this wall built?
Just this year. I want to say pretty much since about January timeframe up until now. They finished up over here. You're going to see where the wall finishes in about another mile or so. They've gone up to there. I'm not sure. I think it's because they've run out of material for it, or they're waiting on some more material. But the area where the wall ends, it's right at the edge, the boundary lines of my precinct that I patrol. And back up in this way, right up through here, I'm going to go over there so you guys can see that's kind of become the main crossing area for most people crossing on the southern side of town. This is where the wall ends right there, where you saw. And this is a pecan orchard that's been here for many years. And over here, up in the corner, we're going to drive over there. Right now, this is one of the main crossing areas for people coming into the U.S. It's shifted down here. Like I said, up until a month ago, it was there at the port of entry where we were at, and we were averaging about 25 to 50 per hour over there in small little groups, 2, 5 to 10. And here, what's happened is the traffic has shifted over here of people crossing, and we've been getting very large groups crossing here, groups of between 100 to 300. See, they've got some right here, 100 to 200 every couple hours. As you can see, they've got a good sized group right here. You guys can get off, but just stay a little bit back. These are what they refer to as the give-ups that they literally come across and they turn themselves in. They give themselves up because they want to flat out claim asylum or some type of relief. Yeah, just stay over here on this side of the van. Don't go up to them because Border Patrol's already got custody of them. Here comes another one. They have to come through an open point in the gate. If they don't open this one, they have to go all the way down to the end over there and then come across through there. So what the fence does is it funnels them into one area, brings them in. So these are still probably stragglers from this group. They're coming.
What are the next steps, like the procedure from when they turn themselves over?
From here, they'll be transported to Border Patrol custody. Here, they're in Eagle Pass. They're taken to the Border Patrol South Station, and there they'll be processed. And immigration authorities will make the determination whether they'll be allowed into the U.S. or if they'll be removed or deported back to Mexico or to their home country. But that determination isn't made right here. That's made there when they go through the processing phase. They are sending some people back, but the numbers are very small, which they're saying is a very small percentage. The majority of them are being allowed entry in through once they're processed. As you can see, there's still more coming over there.
Where have you seen people to be from?
Oh, I've seen people from everywhere. I've seen people from all over Central America, South America, all the way from Mexico, all the way to Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela. Dale para allá, muchachos. Dale para allá. ¿De qué país son?
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua. Gracias.
De Cuba.
Cuba. Pásale para allá. Different countries.
Can you talk through what are the requirements to qualify for asylum?
Well, I'm not too familiar with the requirements, but a lot of the people that are coming across, the vast majority of them, the upwards of 95% of them, they're all claiming some type of asylum, whether it be a political asylum, which is the main reason, but there's certain criteria that the immigration authorities have that will allow that. Right now, the way the immigration law is set up, people who are from other parts of the world other than just Mexico, which is a policy that's been in place for many years, they're coming across right now and they're claiming political asylum. And for a person to be determined to claim political asylum, well, their case has to be investigated and looked into further. They have to go speak to an immigration judge, and the immigration authorities have to review them on a case-by-case basis. And that's backing up the immigration court system very much. That's why pretty much they're being given a document to allow them into the U.S., to let them have a court date at a certain time. So at first they were telling them between 3 to 6 months to have a court date, and now they're not even, on some I've been told, they're not even putting a date on them anymore, that they'll contact them. And it's very difficult to do that once they're on the interior of the U.S. to keep track of them. But just because of the sheer numbers of people coming across. But right now, as you can see, the temperature's probably nearing about 100 degrees right now. It's very hot. Right now the river is a little low, so there's people crossing. And like I was saying earlier, just here we are Monday, on Friday, we had 8 deceased, coming across. And there's people drowning, men, women, and children. There's people dying in the brush because of the heat. They're getting heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and they're just succumbing to the elements. You can see they're here in the shade. Right now they're trying to, what Border Patrol is doing, they're getting their basic information, their name, what country they're from, their date of birth. And they're getting that information, and once they have that, then they'll transport them to the Border Patrol station for processing. That's about 3 miles from here. So, but this is it right here. This is them crossing. This has become one of the main crossing areas. Is over there, they've got National Guard posted. They've got a permanent posting over there. Like he came over and opened the gate for him to let him in. They have access to these points. But they'll come up and down all along here, and Sometimes the majority of times they're crossing in very large groups. It looks like here we've got maybe about 50, right about here more or less, from all different countries, all different nationalities, Central and South America. The ones that came through right now were Cubans and Nicaraguans. So you see we got men, women, and children over there, senior citizens, and the weather's very hard on them, especially the older folks. And if they don't have water, or if they're not in some kind of reasonably decent shape, or the kids and the older adults, they can succumb to the heat very easily. And I've seen that so many times. And I've had numerous calls in the past responding to deceased out here in the brush because they just don't carry water with them, or they get lost, and unfortunately they become a fatality due to the elements.
So what's happening here now?
They're coming with a bus to pick them all up because it's such a large number of them.
With Title 42 being put in place, and then they were going to have it expire, but now it's been extended, what have you observed in terms of migration pattern changes with the installation of 42 and the plausible expiration of it?
Well, regarding Title 42, going back a little bit around to the February-March timeframe, when there was first discussion about Title 42 being removed, people were still crossing in big numbers every day. And when back then, we were getting people crossing in small groups, but constantly nonstop. And now what it's been relegated to is that we've been getting more numbers of people crossing, but in much larger groups. But in very much larger groups, in between 100 to 300 every couple of hours in different areas. But I mean, to me, Title 42 it's nothing more than a number, because people are still crossing. It's kind of insignificant. What they were predicting was last week, when Title 42 was supposed to run out on May 23rd, and then a federal judge decided to leave it in place, people are still crossing. But what we're seeing more and more is that we're seeing people, whereas they were giving themselves up, now they're starting to come in, and they're not giving themselves up. They're tending to run from law enforcement, or they're tending to run from the National Guard or the Border Patrol, or from us. And that makes us think twice, because why are they running if they're trying to claim some type of asylum, some type of relief from where they're coming from? So if they're not wanting to turn themselves in, then there might be some other nefarious issue there. Either they've been prior deported, or the 95% of the time they've either been prior deported, or they've had criminal issues before here in the United States. Here they're sending another van to go and to help pick up. They've got some family units there, and I don't know if you saw them, how they were kind of in lines there. So they probably got them separated by lines and by country. So, but all along this area right here, the flow of people coming across has shifted over here, whereas before it was a little bit further up where we were at the port of entry. But the numbers with regards to Title 42, if they take it away, at some point Title 42 is going to be removed, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be. I don't think they're going to leave it in place indefinitely. If they do, well, fine. But whether they do or they don't, people are still crossing. They're still crossing. But they've given us kind of a heads up in law enforcement, is that if Title 42 gets removed, or once it's removed, then that's going to, be an even bigger green light for more people to come across, even larger numbers than what we're seeing right now. And when you get more numbers of people crossing, it becomes more complicated because you're having to deal with the whole receiving issue and ones that are giving themselves up, wanting to try and claim asylum, others that are trying to run away from you for whatever reason. And then we're dealing with them because they're getting into the neighborhoods, and it just causes a whole lot of issues here in the local community. But what's going on here, it's going on here right now, right here as we speak. Within a couple of months, you're going to have several thousands of people being introduced to larger cities like Chicago, Miami, Kansas City, Cleveland, all over the U.S. They're going to be going. So to just imagine several thousand people, coming across here, and then having here, we're a community of about 30 to 35,000 people, and we're receiving several thousand people a day. And if Title 42 gets removed, those numbers are going to double or triple, and it's going to be a big pull on our resources here. But as soon as either these undocumented persons, either they're sent back or they're allowed in, their numbers are just going to go somewhere else. And like I said, with the issues we're having here, they're going to deal with the same issues in the interior, and it's just going to keep going. It's going to keep going so long as we have this. So long as we have the situation we have right now.
What are the types of issues that the local community deals with because of the migration patterns?
We've been having a lot of homes broken into. People that, let's just say, for example, they leave to go shopping, or they'll leave home for the weekend to go out of town. They'll come back to find their homes broken into, a window broken, the door forced in. And a lot of times it's people we find it's people coming across that they're undocumented out of necessity, that they need a place to shelter, or they're looking for food or for water. We've had a lot of stolen vehicles. We've had people break into vehicles back and forth. People going into neighborhoods, getting into yards, knocking on doors at 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And we start getting 911 calls coming in constantly. So us local law enforcement, we get taxed a lot running around, going from call to call, and then we get all of a sudden a call that there's 100 and some odd people crossing there on the highway. We'll get a 911 call, or we'll get a call that there's 30 people walking through a neighborhood, knocking on doors at 1, 2 in the morning, and then we'll get there, and sometimes they want to turn themselves in or they'll run. But we've had a lot of vandalism issues arise from this. It's been lots. Those are the negative side effects, the real negative side effects, because they have to do with criminal issues, and then we have to deal with the aftermath. The people that have property damage or damage to their vehicles, whatever the case may be, and they're left a lot of times to deal with that and foot that bill, and we have to respond and make that report for them. And sometimes we go, and sometimes we catch the people, and sometimes we don't. But it's the number of calls for us. It's been about 8 to 10 of our 911 calls are for issues involving undocumented persons. So that number has greatly risen, by large numbers. And we're a small community. We don't have huge resources, and we only have so many. We have a local police department, we have a sheriff's department, we have our constable's department as well. Before we started having these issues with people crossing illegally into the U.S., the Border Patrol, they would pretty much handle that. And now we've assumed a role in supporting them, because they're stretched so thin in trying to do their job, trying to do their task right now with processing people. And it leaves a limited number of people to put out there on the line. And so it's left up to the state and local authorities to kind of step up a little bit and help them, assist them as best as we can, and also the National Guard out there as well.
You mentioned earlier that you're even going on like 6 days straight without having a day off. Is that typical?
That's one of the results that's happened, is we're working longer hours, 10 to 12-hour shifts, sometimes staying up to 16 hours, because the calls constantly come in, especially at night. On between the hours of about 10 p.m. to about 3 in the morning is our 911 system gets bombarded with calls of people saying that, you know, they're seeing a group of 30 walk through their neighborhood, or there's somebody in their backyard, and, you know, there's someone breaking into their vehicle, someone suspicious in the neighborhood, and we go and check it out, and 9 times out of 10 it's an undocumented person. So we're having to go and pick them up and drop them off at the Border Patrol station, and it's just taking up a large percentage of our time, right? And that's on top of answering all our regular calls like vehicle accidents, regular 911 calls for assistance, whatever the case may be, whether it's a domestic or just someone needing assistance, wanting to make just a simple report. That's just added to more and more resources that we need, and we're stretched thin as it is. And our officers, our local officers and deputies, they're just being stretched so thin because we're going just from call to call to call.
What additional responsibilities would you say you've taken on that maybe wasn't part of the job description before?
My job description, I'm supposed to be taking care of the local courts. I'm a deputy constable. That's my principal duty. Is we handle the county court and our justice of the peace courts here in Maverick County. That's the main duty of our constable's office. And we handle a lot of what are called civil matters, civil issues, such as evictions, or we investigate property violation issues such as that go to our justice of the peace or county courts. We bailiff the courts, and we enforce the decisions of the justices of the peace. But when there aren't courts going on, then we go back to our main law enforcement function, which is patrolling, which is our primary law enforcement role. And since right now we're just coming out of the time of COVID here in Texas, then during the time of COVID, we were relegated to going back to patrol, and because they were doing a lot of the courts through video conference or teleconference or via Zoom or Skype because of the COVID issues. And now they're starting to have courts again, but all in that time we got relegated back to our main function, which is patrol, trying to be proactive. But in doing that, we found that the majority of our calls coming in are the undocumented persons that we've been getting coming across. But this is the area that I patrol here. This is part of Precinct 4, which happens to be unique because we have an international boundary with the United States and Mexico, several miles of it. And right all up and down this corridor right here, it's also a main crossing area. And sometimes they cross through here, and sometimes they give themselves up, sometimes they run, and it's just very difficult. We've had numerous persons deceased up and along the river that have drowned. You know, just last month we had unfortunately, that National Guard soldier that drowned trying to save a couple of people crossing. You know, in days following after that, you know, we've had even more drownings, more people we're finding deceased in the brush. It's just very difficult. We're averaging about 1 to 2 deceased per day. Last Friday I think the most number I've seen we had 8 in one day. And it's very sad because a lot of times the people, when we recover the deceased, unfortunately, a lot of times they don't have any type of ID on them. So the person is left to being either a John Doe or a Jane Doe. And it's very difficult to try and identify the person. If we're lucky enough that we find ID on the person and we can positively ID them, then it's easier for us to contact their consulate, their respective consulate, and then they can contact the families and say, well, you know, unfortunately your family members, you know, they didn't make it, they're deceased. But at least you can give some kind of closure to the families, because we get very many that are very many of the people that are crossing that we find deceased. They don't have any type of documentation or any types of ID on them, and it's very hard to identify them. and they just kind of, they just get put in, they just get put in the file, unfortunately.
And this includes children.
Men, women, and children, all you name it, all ages, males, females, all different nationalities. Over the weekend, we had three. There were 3 children. I believe they were 10, 8, and 5-year-olds that they found. They found them together, drowned. They were part of a family. Very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. This river is very dangerous. It can be very treacherous. People think it's very easy to cross, but it's not. Even for some of the best athletes, best swimmers, it can be very treacherous, very dangerous. The current can change within a couple of hours. The depth of the river can change. There's lots of debris in the river. There's lots of rocks. There's lots of debris left over from years and years of flooding. And there's lots of areas that are very dangerous that can have cross currents or, unfortunately, whirlpools. And an area that looks shallow can become deep very quickly without knowing. And someone crossing that doesn't know how to swim, they can find themselves in an emergency very quickly. And a lot of times we find that people will cross. There's little islands here all up and down the river, and they'll start crossing. And once they get to the island and they start crossing again to the rest of the part of the river, they find that it's deeper, and they get stuck there. And they'll be stuck there for hours. And sometimes we don't have personnel which is usually the Border Patrol. They have their boats in the water, and they're just so busy up and down the river. It'll take sometimes several hours for them to get there, to get to them, to try and get them off those islands and get them to safety. And they'll just be stuck there for hours without any food or water, which can be very dangerous as well with the heat.
What's the name of the town that's across from there?
The city that's across from Eagle Pass is called Piedras Negras. It's a city, it's about 250 to 300,000 people. It's got a very large population compared to Eagle Pass. And the state is Coahuila. Piedras Negras, Coahuila, Mexico. So compared to Eagle Pass, they're much larger than us. And also we've been told, there's numbers between 7,000 to 10,000 people waiting to cross, that were waiting for Title 42 to be lifted in Piedras Negras. And the Mexican authorities, they talk to us a little bit, but they don't give us a lot of information. But they're telling us that supposedly there's a large migrant caravan headed this way all up and down the border, but they've been reluctant to give us numbers and let us know, how many there are. But they've been crossing steadily, constantly, all year long. So what's to say that they're not going to stop from coming? All this area here, from up until about a month ago, they were crossing heavily through here, and this area here was all covered in brush and carrizo, bamboo, cane, and the National Guard came. Here comes some more. They're walking across, and they keep coming. And there's some more down in the water. Síguele para allá, ya están los soldados. Síguele para allá, allá están. Crossing children, and unfortunately putting the children's lives in danger by crossing, but it's a risk that they're willing to take. There's some in the water right there. I don't know if they're coming over or not. Yeah, but all up and down here, all this area, this train bridge has been here for forever. But it's very deep. When the water comes across, it makes dangerous cross currents and little whirlpools across there, and people tend to get stuck in those areas. And sometimes they just get sucked under and they drown. It gets busier in the evenings all day long. It's just Right now, the temperature is getting hotter, and when the weather tends to get warmer, more people tend to cross. So we're expecting the numbers. It seems as people make their way up from southern Mexico here to the border, and once they get here, they get so many into Piedras Negras, and then they'll start crossing several hundred at a time, all throughout the day and all the way into the evenings. So whereas before we were having constant crossings like every hour, now smaller numbers, like I said, between 20, 30 to 50 per hour in small little groups. Now we're having big groups of 50, 100 to 200, 300 crossing all at the same time. With it seems like a group of like 200 or 300 will cross, and then it'll be calm for about 2-3 hours. Then we'll have another group of a couple hundred come at the same time. So they're coming across in waves now rather than just coming across in singles, little or very smaller groups like they were before. We get a lot of intelligence reports from the state and the federal level. On the Mexican side, the new currency has become people for the cartels. They control a lot of the area, and they're moving a lot of the people through, and they don't have to move drugs anymore to make money. Now they're moving across people, and the people are coming across, so they pay them a fee, they get them across, or they get them to the river, and that's about it. The Mexican law enforcement, they're trying to try and stem some of the flow, but a lot of times we've seen that they've been pretty much ineffective. They haven't been, it's very difficult for them. If our resources are limited, then I'm going to assume theirs are probably the same way too. They can't dedicate to have, several hundred officers all up and down the border, just like either we can here as well. But they're going to get through. They come through. They posted law enforcement here up and down, and the only thing that happens is they go to the areas where they're not there. So they'll either move further south or further north from where they're at, and they'll just continue to cross at another point. So that's the only thing it does. It just shifts their crossing points, is all it does. Back home, and I'm seeing this here now. I didn't think I'd see this stuff in my backyard, but here it is. The military up and down the border helping out. It's a shame to see this in my hometown, but it's what's going on right now.
On the Mexican side, are they doing anything to prevent the cross?
They're doing very little, very little. The Governor Abbott came about a month or so ago, came into an agreement with the Mexican governors along the border, in agreement so that they could try and help stem the flow of the people coming across to kind of slow it down or stop it. And they have made an effort at it, but unfortunately the numbers of people crossing are just too high. It's very difficult to stop the flow of several thousand people during the day or in the evenings. As you can see right here, we're all up and down the river right here. I believe there's one law enforcement vehicle over there, and there's one Mexican military vehicle here, and that's pretty much it. So if you just go a little bit further up north or a little bit further south here from where they're at, it's pretty much an open gate that they can come, open door where they can come through. So it's just either shifted them. Sometimes they come in, they'll put a boat in the water, an airboat. Sometimes they'll fly a helicopter in. But if they have a group of 50 to 100 to 300 crossing, and they've only got a handful of officers on the Mexican side, or we're only a handful here, we can't stop them. They're not going to stop them over there on the other side. They might stop a handful, but the rest are going to make it through, and then on this side, we're relegated to just receiving them. So, and then we have to safeguard them, take care of them, and go through the process and handing them over to Border Patrol, and they take it from there. So, we've been relegated to, be receiving all the people that are crossing, and then Border Patrol makes the determination whether they get allowed in or get sent back, and the majority are being allowed in. So, we're just here trying to help them to try to keep the numbers contained, keep them here and safeguard them, meanwhile, till they come and pick them up.
Does the cartel pose increased risk to the local community over here?
Right now, we've been seeing, cartel-wise, the issues we've been seeing is a lot of human trafficking, a lot of human smuggling. There's a very fine line in the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. And human trafficking is only one step away from human smuggling, because a smuggler their job is someone pays them just to get them into the U.S. And once they're here, that's it. They're done with them and they go along their way. The human trafficking issue comes in is when someone pays someone to get them across, and once they get them across, they say, you know what, you owe me another $1,000, or else I'm not going to give you your documents back, or I'm not going to let you go. Or they'll take them to a safe house or a stash house to keep them for a day or two before they move them in, and then say, you know what, in order for me to get you out of here, I gotta get some more money from you or your family. If not, I'm gonna turn you in or send you back to your country. So they basically hold them ransom. And a lot of times we find out these operations, of course, they're either with a cartel or some kind of organized crime. And it's a ripple effect. It just goes on and on. The males tend to be, human trafficking, which is more indentured servitude, where if they can't pay off their debt that they owe to the smugglers, then they put them to work somewhere for them until they pay their debt off, which is probably never, because they're constantly charging them more and more. Females, unfortunately, we're finding more and more of them get pushed into the sex trafficking trade, either to become prostitutes or also indentured servitude as well. And the worst part we see is the children, the children, they get exploited a lot. They're coming up, especially the ones that are unaccompanied by their parents. And I've encountered so many children that are on their own here, and I mean, I'm a parent as well. I have 2 sons, and it hurts to see children crying, coming across, and then I start talking to them, and they tell me what they've been through. They're pretty much making a journey of several thousand miles on their own. There's parents entrusting their children's lives to a complete stranger for a fee, and who knows what could happen to them. They could be with them for several weeks to a month till they get them across here. And I mean, we get all levels of law enforcement, whether it's federal, state, local. I'm not going to talk about it, but we get so many horror stories from people, about the children, the women, the children getting exploited, which I'm not going to go into because it's disgusting. The other is females getting pushed into sex trafficking, or females being sexually assaulted all up and down their journey, or even here. Males being kidnapped and beaten, whether on the Mexican side or they're coming across showing obvious signs of, some type of abuse, whether they've got cuts or bruises or sometimes broken limbs. It's at all levels. It's very sad, and we're seeing it every day. Every day we're seeing it here. So that's what the general public doesn't tend to see, what we see every day. But it's coming in. I mean, it's coming in every day, 24/7. It's nonstop.
Do you often see children that are with people that are not their parents?
All the time, almost on a daily basis. We try and interview the children and say, is this your parent, is this your mom and dad? And they say yes. And then we tell the parent, well, what's your child's name? And they don't know the name. Or we ask the supposed parent, what's your child's birthday? And they don't know. So you obviously know that they're not with them. They're just trying to smuggle them in for whatever reason, either to try and get them into the U.S. so that they can use them, disguise themselves as a family unit to try and get in, to use that child, or they're trying to get that child in to get them with a parent that's already here. Or the worst case scenario could be nefarious reasons, illegal stuff, illegal activity. And we've seen it all. We see it all. There many times the children are accompanied. They are. And then we do get the times where parents come across with their children, and in crossing them in the river, they're putting the lives of the children at risk because they don't have any say-so. They have to go along with what their parents, tell them to do. If their parents say, pick up, we're going to another country, they don't have any other choice. So they have to go with them. And they're crossing them across this international boundary here, and they're putting their lives at risk.
Do you have people pretend to be children?
Some individuals that try to sneak in, they're claiming they're underage. We've had a few, not too many, but sometimes that's left up ultimately for ICE and for the Border Patrol to decide is what age they are, especially when they don't have documentation, because they're trying to use it as kind of a backdoor to try and get in, because saying that they're a juvenile. But we have had it happen before. Individuals that are like 19, 20 years old that look like they're much younger, they're saying they're 16 years old or 17 years old. As long as they're underage, they're thinking they'll get a free pass to come in. But all up and down here, we've seen it all. We've seen people, use different names, saying they're from different countries in order so that because they say if they're from their certain country, they'll send them back. But if they say they're from another country, they'll let them in. They hear all sorts of rumors, and we hear all sorts of different, all sorts of different stories from people trying to come into the U.S. A lot of times before, and they're still doing it now, a lot of them will discard their identity documents or their passports, say they're on the Mexican side or on the American side, and they'll use whatever name or try to use an alias just to try and get in because they think they can sneak in. Maybe they've been prior deported before, but they'll use any means necessary to try and come into the U.S. that they can. I mean, we've seen pretty much most methods. It looks like there's some others trying to cross right there. Oh, yeah, they're yelling and hollering. Yeah, they're starting to cross again through here. Sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't, and then we start hearing them yelling and screaming when they need help, and it's hard to get to them sometimes. They gotta go all the way around here. They'll come up through here. You'll see them. Ayaw, dalawan. Da poquito caliente, pero dale poquita agua. The children are scared, and we just try to take care of them the best we can until they come and pick them up. And so they're crossing without any food or water. I just gave some water out to the kids. This weather is brutal. The heat's brutal, and who knows how long it's been since they've had a drink of water or they've eaten anything. And I've attended to so many people out here. I have to carry a backpack of first aid, a whole first aid medical kit in the trunk of my vehicle, and I've had to attend to so many twisted ankles and broken fingers, and people succumbing to the heat, people getting cut. What other way, and trying to bandage them up the best I can. And it's a never-ending issue. It's every day. It's 24/7. It's going to keep on happening, unfortunately.